Hi, everyone. Today, let's go over earnings. Then we'll talk American Express. Then we'll go over the calendar for tomorrow. Then we'll go over the charts. Then we'll go over my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open, as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. Quick reminder, I did make a Patreon. I am posting things on here for free since I have no subscribers. So you can check out information here as I post it throughout the day. And if you want any personalized analysis, check out the membership tiers as well. I also made a Twitter, so if you want to see up-to-date information, you can also follow me there. So looking at earnings for today, you can see the overall market declined on Thursday. Tesla down almost 10% on the day, quite a bit of move down. We talked about this yesterday, but profit margins went below 20%. That was a big hit for them. TNT also reported earnings. The stock was down 10%. DHI rose 5.7% on better than expected earnings. Las Vegas Sands, pretty much anything to do with Las Vegas and casinos is doing well right now, and they also did well. Bed Bath & Beyond is declaring bankruptcy. XPO, this is a Freightliner. They shot up 18%. Freight is still doing well, along with Snap-on going up almost 5% on the day. Novax down 8.2%. Nokia down 9.3%. Philip Morris also went down almost 5% on the day. And then Zion Bancorp went down 4.9%, which is one of those regional banks, which is definitely interesting. You can see deposits declined 16%. So regional banks are not out of the woods quite yet. Moving over to American Express, one of the bigger financial companies, you can see they were down 1% on the day. They had disappointed earnings. Their earnings came in at $2.40, down from $2.73 a year ago. Expectations were $2.66 on just under $14 billion. They actually made $14.28 billion and made less money. So their margins are definitely shrinking. This seems to be a little bit of a theme across the economy. Definitely not what you want to see, especially on a financial company like an American Express. It's not like they're selling goods that they have to purchase. Of course, labor is going to affect them, but this is not the direction you would want to see as an investor. They do mention that travel and entertainment spending has been trending upwards and recovering extremely well. It's been one of the last sectors to recover from COVID. We've talked about that a lot of times on this channel, and American Express is primarily focused on those topics in terms of spending. So they should be doing better, and they did do better on revenue, but they just need to lean out a little bit and make a little bit more money on earnings. We'll see how that plays out for them, but it's not working out quite yet. Moving over to the earnings calendar, you can see Taiwan Semiconductor missed on revenue, beat on earnings. American Express, that miss on earnings that we talked about. Blackstone Group beat on the top and bottom line. Union Pacific also beat on the top and bottom line. Talked about Volvo, they're still doing well. So car companies still doing well out there. DHI, talked about that one as well. Getting down here to the regional banks, you can see beat on earnings, miss on revenue. Webster Financial, miss on both. First Financial Banks, miss on earnings. And First Financial Bancorp did beat on the top and bottom line, so a little bit of mixed results, but like I said, still definitely an issue. Moving over to Friday here, we have Procter & Gamble, HCA, this is a healthcare company, SLB, good oil company to watch, Regions Financial. That's really it. So the major hitter is Procter & Gamble. That'll be interesting. And then I'll be watching SLB as well. Moving over to the charts, starting with the S&P 500 here on the hour and the daily chart. You can see we fell overnight, just like yesterday, rallied into the midday, just like yesterday. And then we fell into the close, which was interesting. Yesterday we held up pretty much right at the top for the close. But this time we fell into the end of day through a huge wick down to the 200 SMA on the hourly chart. Ended up closing above this trend line that I was watching. You can see this is a major daily trend line, and it ended up holding. So we're watching this level very closely. Tomorrow it's going to be about 411.66. If we get below this level and hold, expecting for a retest of this short-term channel that we're in. So far it's been pretty successful trading this channel this week, and it seems like it's going to continue. Maybe we come up, retest 413, then we push back down to 410. It's worth noting we had huge volume at the end of day on a bullish buying candle, so you would expect this to push up into the morning session tomorrow. Looking at the daily chart though, you can see we crossed the SMA, momentum moving in the bearish direction. Talked about options expiration tomorrow in yesterday's video. Definitely check that out. But I don't expect this to break all the way down this week. Certainly could, but because of how many puts are in the market, I do expect this to generally hold up into the close tomorrow. And then next week, I do expect this to kind of waterfall off. Moving over to the NASDAQ here on the 15 and the 4 hour. Similar thesis, gap down overnight, rallied into the midday, kind of made almost a double top at this level, almost hit that 319.60 level, and then we waterfalled off right into the close, bounced at the pre-market lows into the close. Similar thesis on volume, tons and tons of buying at the end of day. So you should expect this to bounce into the morning session. At least that's what I'm looking for. Even on the daily chart here, you can see lots of volume at that level. We hit this longer term uptrend level on the 4 hour chart. And right at that bottom is where we saw all of that buying come in. And we ended up finishing above that 316 level. I wasn't sure if this was going to hold, and I was definitely watching it very closely here at the end of day. And then we rallied right into the close. And like I said, I expect follow through here tomorrow. 15-minute chart momentum says follow through. 4 hour chart momentum definitely still bearish, but choppy at best. Moving over to the Russell here on the hour and the 4 hour. You can see the Russell came down to the 200 SMA on the hourly chart, bounced up to resistance, and then broke down once again. Similar thesis though, lots of volume on the close, big bounce. I would expect to at least hit up to 177.83 if we get through that level, still looking at 179.17. Going back to the high from Friday the 14th, if we hit here and break down and we break this level at 177, then I expect to push down to around 175, which is this major downtrend support. And then we have 174.38 just behind that level. So quite a bit of risk here to the downside, but strong momentum pushing into tomorrow's session. Moving over to the Dow, you can see we've been grinding up here, but we've been slowly drifting down over the last 3 days. Gap down, rallied, hit the 9 EMA as well as VWAP on the 4 hour chart. Now we're stuck between the 55 EMA and the 9 EMA. If that 55 breaks, there's a lot of room before we hit the 200 SMA down at 331.26. So keeping an eye on this one closely. We have the 55 EMA, 335.91, and then below that is 331.26. So lots of downside potential here on the Dow, and it does seem like this is slowly starting to roll over here. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple made a lower high here compared to yesterday's high. You can see that depicted. Came down, tested this lower trend support, bounced into this midpoint and held. So still just barely holding on to this uptrend, but watching this lower high setup, waiting to see if this breaks back down to the 200 at 164.30. That would be interesting. But you have to keep an eye on this volume at the end of day. Just continues to come in quite strong. Moving over to Tesla, on the other hand, this is a complete dumpster fire. Talked about their earnings yesterday being not terrible, but margins are going down. And you can see here we gapped massively and continued lower. In fact, we ended up gapping this entire band that I was watching, and we got below this previous support. Looking at the daily chart, I wouldn't expect this thing to stop until we get to about 144.30 to fill this gap, going back to mid-January here. So high, lower high setup, and I expect lots of follow through to the downside here on Tesla. Moving over to Netflix and Google here, you can see Netflix came into this area of support and then rallied super aggressively up to the 200 SMA on the 4 hour. So definitely an area where we could find support. We also got above the 322.29 level that I was watching, which is right on top of the 144 EMA here. If we hit this level, come down, maybe double bottom or make a higher low, and then get back into this zone, that would be a pretty good trade. But Netflix here finding some support after their earnings. You can see that huge wick on earnings. Expected a little bit of follow through here, but nice bounce into the day today. Moving over to Google, Google was on a run here today. It went up 1.4% on the first candle of the day, doji on the midday, and then rallying into the after hours here today. So Google might be a good play to the upside tomorrow. Momentum moving in the bullish direction. RSI also showing bullishness here on Google. Moving over to Etsy and AMD, these are some extra stocks I'm watching here now. So Etsy's in this downward triangle, looking to see if we can break above this level and get a swing back up to these previous levels around 131. So far, this level here at 150 is holding quite well. You can see we've hit it multiple times here, continue to close above that price. And if we can hold and get above this descending triangle, then this certainly looks like there's some pretty solid upside here. Momentum looking to turn bullish. RSI also looking to turn bullish here. Not a ton of volume, but volume is increasing. And the MACD EMAs are also increasing here. So Etsy looks pretty interesting. AMD, on the other hand, has been declining for many, many days. Going back to 23 March, it continued to decline. We're at major trend support here, you can see. And if we can get above this short-term downtrend line that we're in, we get out here and then start to push higher. There's a lot of upside potential up to over $105 per share. You can see that next major resistance is up around 109. And this continues to be a high, low, higher low setup. And if this continues here, 109, maybe even 114 on AMD seems reasonable. In terms of momentum, slowing bearish momentum. RSI still very bearish, so be patient on this one. Not as fully developed as Etsy, but overall here on the trend, it's still very bullish. Moving over to staples versus discretionary, you can see staples is continuing to rise. We're grinding higher here. We closed above 76. Still looking at 77.50 for my upside target as this continues to look higher and break out. Momentum still very weak, but still grinding. Discretionary, on the other hand, gap down, came back up to 147, tagged that level, and then sold off. Very weak momentum. RSI, very weak. I would expect this to continue lower, looking at 143.87. You also have the 200 SMA sitting down here at 143.26. So continuing to look for more downside in discretionary. Moving over to Pepsi and LULU here, you can see Pepsi, consumer staple, makes sense. This is continuing to grind higher here, getting very close to these previous highs going back to November. So watching this one closely. Might see a little bit of a pullback from this previous high. That would be interesting. RSI looks kind of weak. So does momentum. So keep an eye on Pepsi. Still very bullish, but looks to be topping here. LULU, on the other hand, is breaking out. We're breaking this major downtrend line that we've been watching. And if this starts to break out and accelerate, this could go much higher, much faster. LULU is a very volatile stock. You can see here it went from 290 all the way up to 385, back to 290, back to 377. So very volatile on this stock. But if this starts to break out, we could see a push back up to 380 back at this previous high. And that is not unrealistic for a stock like LULU that moves very aggressively. Moving over to transports here on the hour and the daily, you can see a big bar continuation. Then we grinded lower here on these hourly bars. Ended up being a wick on the day, which is not what you would want to see in terms of a continuation. Momentum is still bullish on the daily chart. RSI and momentum on the hourly are negative. But look at this volume candle here at the end of the day. Lots and lots of buying, especially relative to everything else here at that lower level. Daily volume was not huge, especially when you compare it to 10 April or these candles here going back to mid-March. And it does make sense that we were down a little bit when you look at the major markets, which were also down. But you can see we were only down 0.22%. So outperforming here on transports, definitely watching this one. If this continues higher and markets continue lower, that might actually be a potential buy indicator for the major indices. Moving over to semis, we continue to watch this one here, looking for this head and shoulders breakdown, but we're still holding in this zone. And you can see we had a pretty aggressive rally into the midday here, sold off into the close, but again, high volume at the end of day, pushed back on this candle. You really had to be watching it. This is the 2-hour candle and it looks very bearish here, but that buying came in at the end of day and drove this up really across the markets. Momentum on the daily chart stepping towards bullish once again. We have mixed results here, similar to what we saw going back to the lows from February. And as this pushed up, you can see we had a little bit of a resurgence and then eventually we had a bigger push higher. So is this a move kind of like this where we consolidate, get a bigger dip and then get a continuation? Certainly possible. But overall, I'm still watching this to the downside here on semiconductors. Moving over to yields, we actually saw a sell-off here, which is interesting. So 2-year yield came up to the level that I was watching. Probably just a little bit of a retrace. Maybe we come down to the 21 EMA, down around 4%, and then rally. That would be interesting. But right now, we are seeing some downward movement. 10-year yield, also downward movement. Momentum fading. RSI looking to retest the SMA. Overall, a little bit of a pullback in yields might spark a little bit of bullishness in the markets. So keep an eye on this one. Yields moving lower here today, potentially pushing up equities tomorrow. Moving over to the dollar here, you can see we wicked resistance one more time, sold off, rallying a little bit into the close, but with yields going lower, you should expect the dollar to go lower with them at least a little bit. Still holding in this zone over the last 3 days. But if this level breaks around 101.67, we push back down to 101.25, that could be bullish for markets. Overall, this downtrend is still intact on the daily chart. Momentum still in bullish territory. RSI still drifting in the bullish direction. So mixed results here on the dollar, but really watching yields to help dictate the direction here for the dollar, at least in the short term. Moving over to JNK, similar thesis, continuing to grind lower, gap down, rally into the midday, sold off into the close, and then big buying in the last few minutes. Momentum on the daily chart still drifting down, getting very close to this lower trend line of support. Volume on the day extremely low, lower than we've seen in a while here on JNK. Overall, still bearish, waiting to hit this trend line and potentially look for higher highs after that. Moving over to TLT, actually got a rally here today, so we had been going sideways for 3 days. Yields went lower, TLT went higher, makes sense. We're above the 144 EMA here on the 4-hour chart. Pretty tough trading in here where you have gap lower, 2 sideways candles, gap higher, definitely interesting. Kind of sort of filled this previous gap. Now we're at the 9 EMA on the daily chart. We'll see if we get rejection here. That would be interesting. But overall, momentum is pushing back into the bullish direction. RSI is moving in the bullish direction as well. 4-hour RSI sitting at the 50 line, waiting to push higher. Momentum also bullish here on the 4-hour. I would expect this to push back towards that 200 SMA on the daily chart, sitting up at 105.94. So overall, short-term bullish here on TLT. Moving over to the VIX here on the hour and the weekly. You can see the hourly chart. We've actually gone sideways now for 3 days. Weekly chart, slightly bullish here. We're in green territory. Momentum is still bearish, but the green candle is interesting. If we start to see a little bit of follow through on this and we can get above 1850, that means we're probably going to see more downside. We have that major trend resistance at 1792 as well. So looking to see what happens. Still neutral on the VIX. But it does seem like it's gathering a little bit of momentum to the upside, in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts here, you can see I managed to squeak out another small profit on a bearish day, which you like to see. I have a 176 put on the IWM. I actually took this put off as the market rallied. Once we hit resistance on the IWM, and then as we fell into the midday, I put this back on at 176 for 48 cents, and that's in a small profit here. So managed to make a little bit of money, surprisingly, on my Roth position. Qs, on the other hand, traded it in both directions, did okay. A little bit scary at the end of the day as we were falling pretty aggressively. And then that last minute buying really helped out my position. So going into tomorrow, you can see I have a 313 put, which is at $10 profit for 41 cents. And then a 315 put, which is actually in a small loss here for 32 cents. Rolled this up at a pretty bad time, so see how that one plays out. If we get a bit of a rally and this turns green again, I'll probably take that position off. And then right at the end of day, I ended up putting on a 319 call for 36 cents. Overall, still neutral on the Qs, but looking to see what happens after that big buying that we saw at the end of the day today. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the earnings data so far. Definitely check out the Patreon as well as my Twitter. And like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.